The clock ticked past 11:13 p.m. as Len hunched over the wheel of his Freightliner, the New Mexico night a black curtain beyond the windshield of Highway 62. 27 years on the road had carved him into a veteran, gray stubble, steady hands, a mental map of every pothole from Texas to California. He knew the rules. Keep moving, trust your gut, and avoid the stretches that whispered trouble. Mile marker 301 was one of those. A cursed pin on the map, a spot where drivers swore a woman in white waved from a broken-down car, only to vanish like a dream gone sour. Len had dodged it for decades, weaving detours through backroads that cost him sleep and fuel, but tonight a rush load of medical supplies, oxygen tanks and bandages from Roswell to Amarillo, due by dawn, pinned him to the straight shot. The dispatcher's voice still grated in his ears. No delays, Len. Straight through. So here he was, barreling toward the inevitable, the headlights slicing a narrow path through the void, the air thick with the promise of something he couldn't name. The mile markers ticked up, 298, 299, 300, each a heartbeat in his chest, a rhythm he couldn't shake. Len's knuckles whitened on the wheel, the cab's dim glow casting shadows across his weathered face. Just keep drivin', he muttered, the CB silent, the radio off to dodge the static that thickened out here like fog. He'd heard the stories. Every trucker on 62 had passed over diner counters and crackling airwaves. A woman, young, pale, stranded by a rusted sedan at 301, begging for a ride, gone before the next mile. Some called her a ghost, others a trick of tired eyes, but Len had seen enough late-night shadows to know the road held secrets it didn't share. He'd laughed it off once years back over coffee with Pete, an old mechanic who'd seen it all, until Pete's face went gray, his voice low. She's real, Len. Been there since '87. Don't stop for her. Tonight, though, the deadline loomed and laughter was a memory. At 3:01 she appeared, a silhouette by a sedan, its hood propped open, her white blouse fluttering in a wind that didn't touch the sagebrush. She waved, slow and deliberate, her face a blur of shadow and pallor in the headlights' glare. Len's gut twisted, his foot hovering over the gas, every instinct screaming to blow past. But 27 years had etched a code into him. You don't leave a soul stranded, not on a road this lonely, not with the cold creeping in and the nearest town 30 miles off. He eased onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires, and climbed out, the air sharp with dust and a faint sour tang that prickled his nose. Car trouble, he called, flashlight beam dancing over the sedan. Tires flat, windows cracked, paint peeled to bare metal like it had sat there since Reagan was president. She stepped closer. Young, maybe 30, dark hair framing a face too pale, eyes too still, unblinking in the light. Broke down, she said, her voice soft, flat, like it drifted up from a well. Need a ride to Clovis. Len hesitated, the car's decay gnawing at him. Rusted through, no oil stains, no heat from the engine, but her stare held him steady, expectant. All right, he said, unease coiling tight in his chest. Hop in. Gotta make time. She climbed into the passenger seat, her movements stiff, almost mechanical, her hands folding in her lap like a doll's. Len pulled back onto 62, the rig's rumble filling the silence she left, the marker fading in the mirrors like a bad dream. He tried small talk. What happened back there? But she didn't answer, didn't shift, just stared ahead, her presence a cold weight in the cab. The highway stretched black and endless, the headlights catching jackrabbits darting across the lanes, their eyes glinting like coins. 15 miles out, he glanced over to ask her name. The seat was empty. No click of the door, no rustle of fabric, just gone. His breath snagged, the cab frigid, the cushion damp with rainwater though the sky was clear, the stars sharp overhead. Jesus Christ, he rasped, swerving slightly, eyes darting to the mirrors. Nothing but asphalt and shadow, the road swallowing her whole. He pushed the rig harder, the engine's growl a lifeline, the speedometer ticking up as his hands shook. Clovis loomed by 1:19 a.m. and he pulled into Big Rig Haven. A truck stop bathed in the sickly glow of a neon sign buzzing like a swarm of flies. His boots hit the gravel, legs unsteady, and he stumbled inside, the diner half dead, two drivers nursing coffees, a waitress wiping tables with a rag that had seen better days. Pete was at the counter, an old mechanic with a grease-stained cap and a face carved by decades of oil and grit, his mug steaming in the dim light. You look like you've seen a ghost, Pete grunted, sliding him a coffee without asking. Len spilled it. The woman, the marker, the wet seat, the way she'd vanished like smoke through his fingers. Pete's eyes darkened, his mug clattering to the counter. Coffee sloshing over the rim. "She's been doing that since '87, he said, voice low, barely above the hum of the cooler. "Died in a wreck right at 301. Rolled her car in a storm, they say. Asks for rides, then vanishes. You ain't the first, Len. Won't be the last." Len stared into the black of his coffee, the words sinking in like damp rot. "Seat's still wet," he muttered half to himself. Pete nodded slow. "Always is. Smells like rain, don't it?" Len drained the mug, the heat doing nothing for the chill that clung to him, and headed back to the rig. The seat was still damp, the faint scent of rainwater lingering like a shroud. He finished the run to Amarillo, dropped the load at a warehouse bathed in floodlights, and crashed at a motel off I-40, but sleep came in fits, her face flickering behind his lids, pale, still waiting. 2 nights earlier, 300 miles west, Chris and Tyler had rolled into Rest Stop 9 off I-70 in rural Utah, their first team haul together. A load of machine parts from Salt Lake City to Denver, a gig they'd landed through a hiring hall in a strip mall off the freeway. Chris was the newbie, 6 months into trucking, all restless energy and bad jokes, his blonde hair perpetually mussed under a faded cap. Tyler, a year in, was quieter, steadier, the kind who'd rather scroll his phone than swap stories, his dark eyes shadowed by too many late shifts. They'd split the wheel, Chris on days, Tyler on nights. A partnership born of necessity, not friendship, but it worked. Rest Stop 9 was their halfway mark. A squat brick building with 2 pumps and a vending machine that flickered like it was on its last legs, notorious among drivers as Bad Luck Mile. The tales were grim, rigs stalling, fights turning bloody, drivers vanishing into the desert night, names scratched off logs like they'd never been. Chris laughed it off, old-timers and their ghost stories. But Tyler's silence hinted he wasn't so sure, his thumb pausing over his screen as they pulled in. They parked at 11:58 p.m., the lot empty, the desert beyond a sea of sand and shadow under a moonless sky, the air biting through Chris's jacket as he stretched his legs. "Gonna grab a snack," he said, nodding at the building, the cold seeping into his bones. "Be quick," Tyler called, voice muffled through the cab window, his phone's glow lighting his face, casting sharp angles across his jaw. Chris jogged inside, the clerk, a bored kid with earbuds dangling, barely glancing up as he fished a Coke and a bag of chips from the rack, the air thick with stale coffee and bleach, the fluorescent buzz a dull hum in his ears. He paid with crumpled bills, stepped out and froze. The Volvo was gone. The space where it had idled was bare, just gravel and a faint oil stain, Tyler nowhere in sight. The lot silent save for the wind whispering through the sagebrush. "Real funny asshole," Chris muttered, scanning the pumps, the shadows, the road beyond. Tyler loved pranks, fake breakdowns, hiding behind rigs to jump out laughing. But this was too much, too quiet, the truck's absence a punch to his gut. He called Tyler's phone. No answer, straight to voicemail, the chipper recording mocking him. "Hey, it's Ty, leave a message." "Tyler. Quit screwing around," he shouted, voice echoing off the building, swallowed by the dark, his breath fogging in the chill. Minutes stretched to an hour, then 2, the cold sinking deeper as he paced, shouting Tyler's name into the void, his sneakers scuffing the gravel. He flagged a passing rig, a grizzled woman named Marla, her Peterbilt idling like a beast, her face etched with road-worn lines, who stopped, her CB crackling as she leaned out the window. "What's up, kid?" she asked, voice sharp, eyes narrowing at his wild expression. "My partner, Tyler, he's gone, took the truck, thought it was a joke but he's not back," Chris stammered, hands shaking. Marla's jaw tightened and she grabbed her mic, radioing it in, her tone clipped, urgent. "Kid, that stop's cursed. Seen rigs vanish there myself. Drivers too. You sure he didn't just ditch you?" Chris shook his head, frantic. "He wouldn't, not with the load, not like this." At 2:13 a.m. his pack's CB flared. Tyler's voice, faint, ragged, cutting through the static like a knife. "Help. It's not me driving." The words warped, swallowed by a hiss, the line dead when Chris snatched the mic. "Tyler? Where are you?" he yelled, but only silence answered, the desert mocking him with its stillness. Marla called the cops, her voice steady but her eyes dark, and they arrived. Flashlights sweeping, radios buzzing, but found no tire tracks, no skid marks, just Chris, wild-eyed, clutching the CB like a lifeline. Highway cameras showed nothing. No Volvo, no plates matching theirs, the road a blank slate. Prank gone wrong, an officer muttered, scratching his notepad, but Tyler's plea, "It's not me driving," stuck with Chris, a splinter in his mind, sharp and unrelenting. Days turned to weeks, the search fading like dust in the wind, Chris hitching back to Salt Lake on a cattle hauler's rig, crashing on a cousin's couch in a haze of guilt and questions. He'd replayed it 1,000 times. The stop, the snack, the empty lot. Searching for a crack, a clue, but it stayed sealed, a locked box he couldn't pry open. Then 3 weeks later, a rancher found the truck, 40 miles off-road in the desert, out of fuel, doors locked tight, sand caked in the wheel wells like it had driven through hell. Tyler was gone. His wallet sat on the driver's seat, CB mic tangled beside it, the leather worn where his hand had gripped it, the cab smelling faintly of rain though the desert was dry as bone, the sky unmarred by clouds for days. Marla had her own nightmare brewing 5 nights before Len's run, when she'd taken a midnight load from a warehouse in Gallup, New Mexico, a job that stank of trouble from the jump. She'd hauled for 18 years, steal, produce, the occasional hush-hush crate. Her Peterbilt a second skin, her life a ledger of miles and debts, the road her only constant since her husband walked out a decade back. This gig was off. No sender, no receiver, just coordinates scribbled on a slip and a stack of cash from a twitchy man in a hooded jacket, his eyes darting like a cornered animal's. "Deliver it by dawn," he'd said, voice clipped, handing her the keys to a sealed trailer. "Don't open it." The manifest claimed miscellaneous goods 10,000 pounds, but it felt heavier, the rig groaning as she hooked it up, the weight settling like a curse on her shoulders. Highway 62 turned hostile the moment she hit it, the trailer dragging, the Peterbilt sluggish, the engine straining like it pulled double the load. Her GPS glitched, rerouting her off 62 to dirt tracks, isolated spurs winding through scrubland no delivery should touch, the screen flickering like it had a mind of its own. She fought it, sticking to the main road, her knuckles white on the wheel, but the coordinates shifted, the voice command chirping, recalculating, turn left in 500 feet. At a gas station near Texaco she stopped, the trailers hum a low growl in her ears, a sound that didn't match the silence of the night. She grabbed a tire iron, circled back and froze, handprints smeared the inside of the locked trailer doors, pale and streaked, pressing out like they'd clawed for air, the steel cold under her trembling fingers. Her breath hitched, the iron slipping in her grip. "What the hell?" She tapped the door, more scratching frantic than a low moan cut off sharp like a throat closing. She didn't open it, couldn't, the man's warning a chain around her neck. "Don't open it." She drove on, heart pounding, the handprints a ghost in her mirrors, the road stretching black and unforgiving. The coordinates led to a sealed underground warehouse off a desert spur, concrete doors sliding open, floodlights harsh, no signs, just men in hazmat suits waiting, silent, motioning her to back in. "Open it," she asked, voice cracking, her boots rooted to the cab floor. They nodded, faceless behind visors, but Marla shook her head, climbing back in. "Not my job," she snapped, peeling out, dust choking the air behind her, the trailer's weight a phantom she left behind. She quit that week, sold the Peterbilt to a rookie with stars in his eyes, took a desk job at a freight office in Albuquerque, left the road cold as a grave. Days later the news hit. An FBI raid on that warehouse, hazmat teams swarming, helicopters buzzing overhead, no word on what they found, just sealed lips and blacked out reports. Marla didn't ask, didn't want to know, but the handprint stayed, a stain she couldn't scrub, waking her at night with the echo of that moan, the feel of cold steel under her palm. The thread started knotting 3 weeks later when Len, restless after his run, stopped at Big Rig Haven again, the diner a refuge from the road's echoes, its coffee a bitter anchor. Pete was there, same cap, same mug, but his eyes were sharper now, listening as Len recounted the woman, the damp seat, the chill that wouldn't fade, his voice rough with sleepless nights. "Heard more since you left," Pete said, leaning in, his coffee untouched. "Kid went missin' up at rest stop 9. Team driver, truck found in the desert, wallet and all. Same night some gal, Marla think her name was, rolled through here spooked talkin' about a load that scratched, handprints on the inside." Len's brow furrowed, the pieces jagged in his mind. "All on 62? Pete nodded, slow, his fingers drumming the counter. "Somethin's tyin' it, 301 the stop, that warehouse. Been hearin' it for years, bits and pieces. Woman in white rigs goin' dark freight that don't sit right. Ain't just stories, Len, it's a pattern. Len drained his mug, the heat doing nothing for the cold that lingered, the woman's face flickering in his memory, pale, still, waiting. He'd seen Marla that night, passing her rig near Texaco, her face pale in the cab light, eyes fixed ahead like she'd seen the devil. And the kid, Chris, he'd heard the name on the CB, a rookie begging for help that never came, his voice crackling through the static like a plea from the grave. Chris was still out there, a ghost of his own, haunting truck stops from Utah to Colorado, telling anyone who'd listen about Tyler, the Volvo, the voice, "It's not me driving." He'd hitched back to Salt Lake after the cops gave up, crashing on a cousin's couch in a haze of guilt and questions, the walls closing in with every replay of that night. The stop, the snack, the empty lot. He tracked down Marla a week later, found her at a diner in Grand Junction, her desk job fresh, her hands steady as she stirred her coffee, but her eyes were distant, haunted. "You think it's connected?" he'd asked, desperate, his voice cracking like a kid's. She'd shrugged, staring into her mug. "Dunno, kid. But 62's got a hunger. I felt it same as you." Marla had spilled her story then. The load, the handprints, the hazmat crew. Her voice low, measured, like she was reciting a confession she couldn't unburden. Chris had nodded, scribbling it down on a napkin, the pieces slotting together like a puzzle he couldn't solve. He'd started digging. CB chatter, online forums, old-timers at fuel stops, piecing together a tapestry of 62's ghosts. A driver named Buck, grizzled and half-deaf, told him over a beer in Moab. Saw a chick in white near 301 once, about 10 years back. Waved me down, didn't stop. Next guy did, never showed for his drop. Another, a woman called Rosie, timed in at a diner in Price. Heard scratching on a sealed run out of Gallup, 99 maybe. Dropped it at a warehouse, hazmat suits came out, no words. Quit same day. The whispers grew, a web spreading through the trucking world, threads tying Len's woman, Tyler's vanishing, Marla's load into a knot that tightened with every tale. Len kept driving, couldn't quit, the road was in his blood. But he stuck to daylight runs now, avoiding 62 when he could, the damp seat a memory he couldn't shake. He'd stop at Big Rig Haven every few weeks, Pete a constant, the diner a sanctuary where the stories piled up like mileage logs. Heard from a guy in Lubbock. Pete said one night 3 months after Len's run, the diner quiet save for the clink of dishes. Rookie took a load down 62, saw the woman at 301, gave her a ride. Seat was wet when she vanished. Quit after that. Chris turned nomad, chasing leads, his cousin's couch a distant memory as he hitched from stop to stop, a backpack and a notebook his only cargo. He'd found a photo online, a grainy shot from 87, a wreck at 301, a sedan crumpled like tinfoil, a woman's body pulled from the ditch, her white blouse stained red. The caption read, "Jane Doe unidentified storm victim." He showed it to Marla at their second meet. A truck stop in Farmington, her desk job wearing thin, her hands restless on the table. "That her?" he asked, sliding the printout over. She stared, nodded slow. "Could be. Same build, same hair. Didn't see her face clear, too dark." Marla was fraying, the office a cage after 18 years of open road, the handprints a weight she couldn't shed. She'd started dreaming, scratching, moans, hazmat visors glinting in the dark, waking with the taste of dust in her mouth. She tracked the raid news, scraps leaking through back channels. Biohazard warnings, sealed perimeters, no cargo named. Whatever it was, she told Chris, voice low, it wasn't goods. It was alive, or had been. Chris scribbled, his notebook thick with names. Buck, Rosie, Pete, Len, dates, places, a map of 62's hunger sprawling across the pages. A month later, a rookie named Dana took a load down 62, her first solo run. Electronics from Roswell to Lubbock, a gig she'd snagged to prove herself after 6 months riding shotgun. She passed mile marker 301 at 1:13 a.m., the night thick with stars, her CB buzzing with static that wouldn't quit. A woman waved from a rusted sedan, white blouse fluttering, and Dana slowed, heart pounding, her training kicking in. "Help when you can." "Need a ride?" she called, voice shaky through the window. The woman climbed in, silent, her seat damp by the time they hit Clovis. And empty, no sound, no trace, just the scent of rain and a cold that lingered. Dana pulled into Big Rig Haven, hands trembling, and found Len there, his Freightliner idling outside, his coffee steaming as he listened to her tale. You saw her, Len said, voice rough, meeting her eyes across the counter. 301? Dana nodded, swallowing hard. She didn't say much, just Clovis. Then gone. Pete leaned in, his cap tilted back. Same as him, same as the rest. She's part of it. 62's got a thread runnin' through it and she's the start. Dana finished her run, dropped the load, but the chill stayed, the damp seat a mark she couldn't erase. She kept driving, couldn't quit. The road was a pull she didn't understand, but 62 haunted her, the woman's face a shadow in her mirrors. Chris caught wind of Dana's run through the CB, tracked her to a stop in Tucumcari, her rig parked beside a diner, her eyes hollow as she sipped coffee alone. You saw her too? He asked, sliding into the booth, notebook open. She nodded, slow, her voice barely above the clatter of plates. Seat was wet, smelled like rain. Heard about you, the kid who lost his partner. You think it's all tied? Chris leaned forward, desperate. Yeah, heard Tyler a load. Marla hauled. Something's wrong with 62, been wrong for years. Dana stared into her mug, the steam curling like ghosts. What's it want? Marla quit the desk job a week later, couldn't stand the walls, the hum of fluorescence mocking the freedom she'd lost. She bought a used rig, a beat-up Kenworth from a lot in Santa Fe, got back on the road, freelance now, picking loads that didn't smell of secrets. But 62 called, a siren she couldn't ignore, and she took a run from Gallup to Amarillo, steel pipes, legit papers, no cash under the table. She passed 301 at dusk, the sedan there, the woman waving, and Marla kept driving, eyes locked ahead, the handprints a memory she wouldn't revisit. At rest stop 9, 2 nights later, her rig stalled, the trailer heavier than logged, scratching faint in the dark, soft, insistent like nails on steel. She unhitched it, left it idling, and drove off, the Kenworth's growl a shield against the sound. The coordinates from her old load haunted her, burned into her mind, a scar she couldn't cut out. She drove there one night, off a whim, a pull she couldn't name, the warehouse a ruin now. Concrete cracked, floodlights dead, hazmat tape fluttering in the wind. She circled it, flashlight trembling, and found a hatch, rusted, half open, leading down. She didn't go in, couldn't, the scratching echoing in her skull, but the air smelled of rain, of rot, of something that shouldn't be. She left, the Kenworth roaring back to 62, the road a lifeline she clung to. Len met Chris by chance 4 months after his run at a fuel stop in Clovis, the kid's notebook thick with scrawl, his eyes wild with purpose. You're the 301 guy, Chris said, pumping gas beside the Freightliner, his voice cracking with exhaustion. Len nodded slow. You're the rest stop kid. Heard about your partner. They talked, hours, over coffee at a diner down the road, the woman, the vanishing, the load tying into whispers Len had caught from Pete, from Buck, from drivers he'd met in passing. It's a pattern, Chris said, spreading the notebook. Dates, names, places, a map of 62's hunger sprawling across the table. She's the start, your ghost. Then Tyler, Marla's trailer. Something's moving out there. Dana joined them a week later, tracked Len through Pete, her run a fresh thread in the web. Heard scratching too, she said, voice low, her rig parked outside a truck stop in Lubbock. After 301, took a load through 9, felt wrong, left it. Marla rolled in days after, her Kenworth rumbling, her eyes sharp again, the road her blood once more. Warehouse is dead, she said, joining their table, coffee black and steaming. But it's still out there, whatever I hauled, it's part of this. They sat, 4 souls bound by 62, the diner a war room, the CB chatter a hum of echoes. Buck's tale, Rosie's quit, Pete's warnings, new voices adding weight. A driver named Rico spoke up one night over the airwaves, his rig idling somewhere near Texaco. Picked up a woman at 301 last week. White shirt, quiet. Seat was wet when she vanished. Thought I was losing it, till I heard you guys. Another, a woman called Jade, cut in from Utah. Lost a co-driver at rest stop 9 2 years back. Truck turned up in the sand, empty, smelled like rain. A vet named Hank chimed in from Amarillo. Hauled a sealed load in 95, scratched the whole way. Dropped it at a bunker, hazmat crew took it. Never ran 62 again. The stories piled, a mountain of whispers. 301's woman, 9's curse, loads that lived, spreading through the trucking world, a virus in the static. Len kept driving, daylight runs, but 62 loomed, a shadow he couldn't outrun, the damp seat a mark he checked every hull. Chris turned hunter, hitching stop to stop, his notebook a Bible, his voice a plea on the CB. Tell me what you've seen. Marla stayed solo, her Kenworth a shield, but she listened, the road her pulse, the scratching a rhythm she couldn't shake. Dana pushed on, rookie no more, her runs cautious, her eyes on the mirrors, the woman's face a ghost she knew too well. A year later, a kid named Eli took a load down 62, first run, cattle feed from Roswell to Clovis, his rig a borrowed Mack with a dented grill. He passed 301 at 2:47 a.m., the sedan there, the woman waving, and he stopped, young and green, his heart soft for strays. Clovis? She asked, climbing in, her seat damp by the time they hit town, and empty, no sound, just rain on his hands when he touched it. He pulled into Big Rig Haven, found Len there, older now, grayer, his coffee a ritual, and told him, voice shaking. She's still out there, Len said, meeting his eyes, the diner quiet save for Pete's grunt. Always will be. Chris heard it on the CB, tracked Eli to Clovis, his notebook thicker, his cap frayed, his hunt a life now. Marla rolled through days later, her Kenworth idling, her story unchanged, handprints, hazmat, a warehouse dead but alive in her dreams. Dana passed through, her rig a constant, her tail a mirror, 301, the damp, the pull. They met 5 now, the diner a nexus, the road a predator they couldn't kill. It's bigger than us, Chris said, voice raw, the map sprawling, 301-9 gallop, threads of rain and rotten loss. It's 62, Marla muttered, coffee cold. It's hungry. The road kept calling, its hunger vast, its stories endless. Len's ghost, Tyler's plea, Marla's load, Dana's echo, Eli's mark. All stitches in a seam that wouldn't close, a pattern no one could break. Highway 62 rolled on, black and boundless, a predator's grin in the night, its hull a legacy of whispers. Wet seats, lost rigs, scratching steel, binding the drivers in a web that stretched from marker to marker, stop to stop, load to load, a hunger that fed on the road itself.